What is going on, everyone? Welcome into our latest TDR Cannabis in 5, presented by Dutchie. As usual, I'm your host, Shad Dales, and today I'm going to dive into a poll that's drawing fire from reform advocates and raising serious questions about who gets to frame the rescheduling debate, and there are some serious questions here. But before we get into it, a quick word from our presenting sponsor, Dutchie. With Dutchie running your cannabis retail operations, it's simple, reliable, and modern. From point of sale to e-commerce, Dutchie offers tools built for the regulated market so you can scale smarter, not harder. And if you want to learn more, visit business.dutchie.com. All right, let's get into today's latest TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. So as I said earlier, a new poll commissioned by who else? Smart Approaches to Marijuana. By its own description, a prohibitionist group, and they're making bold claims that a majority of Americans oppose rescheduling cannabis. But reform advocates, including Marijuana Policy Project and NORML, NORML, they're pushing back hard, calling the questionnaire misleading and accusing Sam of shaping the narrative they already want. And this goes without saying. So here's the crux. Sam's poll doesn't just ask, do you support rescheduling? Instead, it embeds hypothetical consequences. So for example, it says, if rescheduling meant cannabis companies had more financial incentive to advertise to children, would you be more or less likely to support it? So misleading. Also, if rescheduling meant Chinese and Mexican cartels would get tax breaks, would you be more or less likely to support it? I have no idea how anyone gives these people any kind of credibility anymore, because really, these are heavy premises baked into the question, and they aren't neutral. That goes without saying. In fact, they're far from it. And when 63% of respondents say they'd be less likely to support rescheduling under those scenarios, Sam touts that as proof most Americans oppose it. Are you kidding me? So reform advocates point out a few things. One, legal protections already exist. It's already illegal to advertise cannabis to minors, regardless of its schedule. Changing from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 doesn't magically allow new ad schemes targeting children. Hello? 2, cartels paying taxes is a stretch. The assumption that the illicit actors will suddenly file tax returns undercuts the core logic of criminal enterprise. Like, what are we doing here? Like, the illicit market is going to pay taxes? Then you got number 3, leading questions equals leading answers. Because Sam designed the survey, the framing leans anti-rescheduling. So really, what's Sam up to here? In public statements, Sam President Kevin Sabet claimed the poll revealed voters across the spectrum don't want Washington handling big weed tax breaks that could push marketing to children. But the big question is Sam using the poll as a narrative tool rather than an objective measure? A preemptive strike to sap momentum from rescheduling. And does it work? No, it doesn't. So yes, this is common sense for us, but here's how you have to look at things. Polling isn't just academic. In Washington, polls color media coverage, influence congressional messaging, and give lawmakers cover. If Sam can plant a headline, maybe something like majority oppose rescheduling, that becomes a talking point even if the data behind it is deeply flawed, and it is deeply flawed. So here are the broader stakes. 1, rescheduling to Schedule 3 would allow cannabis companies to take federal tax deductions. It may also loosen research restrictions tied to Schedule 1. Also, and something to point out, as we've said time and time again, rescheduling doesn't fully legalize cannabis nor erase federal criminal statutes. Then there's also reform advocates who fear that by focusing on hypotheticals about children or cartels, Sam is deliberately tapping into fear levers, emotional triggers that override nuanced debate. So we've seen this playbook before in prohibitionist messaging. Invoke children, foreign crime, slippery slopes, now it's in survey form. But this whole children narrative has been going on for the better portion of 40 years. But the reality is youth usage goes down, and there's data to support that in various states that have adult use programs already in place. So let's pull this apart. You see a poll like this, it is a genuine attempt to gouge sentiment or a narrative tool dressed as data. So here's some possible follow-up probing questions. 1, how would you reword those Sam questions to remove bias so they're fair to respondents and still get the heart of rescheduling sentiment? 2, even if Sam's poll is flawed, in practice, do you think the messaging will influence lawmakers more than better data? 3, could Sam-style polling open a new front in the battle over cannabis regulation, where reframing becomes the battlefield instead of substance? And then there's 4, what's the responsibility of the press, reform groups, or even polling firms themselves to call out or validate this kind of survey design? Again, Look at the data. So really, let's anchor this into context. Most mainstream polls over the past years indicate majority support for reform, including legalization and rescheduling. Groups like Attach and NORML, they call Sam's approach disingenuous, and they warn that the poll is distortion, not a revelation. Even MPP's executive director Adam Smith called out the fear tactics, saying that Sam is spewing misinformation to confuse lawmakers and, let's face it, the public. Additionally, NORML's political director noted that prohibitionist groups have long used creative interpretations of data to cast doubt on public support when direct persuasion fails. So really, this isn't new. What's new is that it comes at a moment where rescheduling is under real consideration, and people on all sides are pulling every leverage they can, including controlling the narrative. So as Sam gets louder, in my opinion, they're getting more desperate. And that to me makes me feel that rescheduling is going to happen sooner rather than later. So here are where things look headed and where to watch over the next coming days. 1, Sam will likely push media coverage of its poll aggressively, trying to make most of Americans oppose rescheduling to the headline narrative. Don't read into this. 2, reform groups will counter with alternative polling and calls to expose flawed methodology. 3, members of the Congress and the White House will have this in their inbox as ammunition or warning. 4, the public, especially voters who don't closely follow cannabis policy, may see the poll headlines and assume rescheduling is unpopular, even when deeper data suggest otherwise. So if this becomes a narrative at a moment where momentum is real, I would step back and look at the big picture. Over 70% of Americans want cannabis reform. That's the takeaway here. People will read through these headlines. So here's what I want the audience to remember. 1, polls are not neutral. Their structure, question design, and framing strongly influence outcomes. 2, Sam's recent survey leans heavily into worst-case hypotheticals rather than measuring core support. Number 3 is the goal appears less about truth-seeking and more about building a narrative control, eroding political will before reform actually gets real traction. So if there's anyone new here watching this for the first time and you see this headline where it says most Americans oppose rescheduling, don't let it pass without asking how do they ask these questions. Because like I said, over 70% of Americans right now want cannabis rescheduling to happen. That's it for our latest TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications, and leave your comments below and let us know what you think of these questions that Sam put in place. Again, look through what they're doing and realize that over 70% of Americans want cannabis rescheduling to happen. Let's get it going already. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you in our next video. This is the latest TDR Cannabis in 5 presented by Dutchie. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.